promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your heads, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your head, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. He's a promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your heads, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. 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 Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your heads, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. He's a promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your heads, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. He's a promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your heads, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. He's a promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your heads, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your head, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. He's a promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come, holy, holy, we are back. Lift your heads, 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples, raise your beds. Wake up Israel, heavens black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. Armor ready, words intact, promise keeper. And the heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black.
Mic check. Let me check and make sure I'm coming in. All the issues that I had just to get on here. All the issues I had just to get on here. Greater light.
Here we come.
They sure don't want me talking about amazing grace.
6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples,
They don't
raise
want
your
me.
beds. Wake up Israel, heavens
They
black.
don't want me
Jesus
talking about amazing grace tonight, y'all. They don't. I'm talking about I heard a phone ring and all come through my system. Then it did a whole nother reset, update. Oh, ugh, goodness. Don't they got bigger fish to fry? Ain't nobody paying me no attention. Goodness. Let me do a mic check real quick. I got to check, make sure I'm coming in. See, is my sound coming in? Can you hear me? Yeah, yeah, I'm coming in. Look, let me get this party started right. My mind is God's mind. I'm always reflecting divine wisdom and divine intelligence. My brain symbolizes the capacity to think wisely and spiritually. God's ideas unfold within my mind in perfect sequence. I'm always poised, balanced, serene, and calm because I know God has provided the perfect solution to every single one of my needs. You say amen. You can say Selah. I say, God, you promise. God is going to keep his promise. I'm not going to be on here too long. I had intended to be on here about an hour and a half, but I lost at least 45 minutes just trying to uh, rehash from whatever it is that they just did to my system where they didn't want me to go live. Took control of my pointer, my mouse. I was watching the mouse move on his own. I heard a couple of rings come through. Uh, I don't mind them in the system. But you don't have to do all that extra. I don't know, understand what all the extra is about. Because all I was going to do was just go live from my phone. Well, I was having issues with uploading this evening from my phone. So who knows? I guess Elon getting sick of me. I guess Elon's putting out his little bandits and they getting sick of me because I know they don't want me. They don't want me talking about Amazing Grace. I remember probably about a year or two. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was, I'm going to say her name. Y'all know I'm not big on saying, especially the female names in the community, but I highly respected her. And she had said, I said something about Amazing Grace in the chat. And she had said, you know, you be careful on the terms that we use. And it was Sister Soul. She said something about Amazing Grace, especially to the wretch part. And me, the way I used to be in the chats, it was still like that. Sometimes I said something to the effects of, a wretch is a word that Bahamian women call their children when they rude, or they call loose women and stuff. My grandmother, that was one of her favorite words. Uh, Get in here, you little wretch. Uh, So for me, hearing wretch I didn't take it as such. Okay, now why am I talking about Amazing Grace? Because I definitely was going to talk on some other topics, but I just happened to be going through, and yeah, I always find that one thing that catches my attention, and I love um, the opera type tone voices, like the Honorable Mrs. Price. Um, I just love music and singing, except for country. I still can't get with country, that twang or whatever you call it. So, of course, I did know about the unveiling and reopening of Notre Dame, but I didn't really want to focus too much on it because I had already said, I think now I know why YMCA. I did a build why YMCA was so important to Trump and Elon Musk. And all of that is connected to Notre Dame, Napoleon, and all that. I did a build on that about a week ago before the opening of Notre Dame. But this young lady was singing, and her voice was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But clicked that same remark that Sister Soul made so many years ago, and my journeys and the lessons and knowledge that I've been intaking over the past few years, and even thinking back to m- all of my years in different branches of church, Pentecostal, Seventh Day Adventist, the Baptist, and that song ringing out, but not knowing the history of the song. So as this young lady began to sing and her voice was so beautiful, usually I would stay and listen, but I was immediately like a rejection. I didn't want to hear the rest of the tone. Now, there's a particular part of the song of Amazing Grace that I take to, and I just happen to find the history on it. So the part where it says we, when we've been there 10,000 years, came on years later. But now that I read the history of the song of Amazing Grace and see the connection of why this initiation for Notre Dame comes into play at this particular um, transition in not just time, but dimensions and spiritual realms. I get it. Now I get it. Because the person that wrote that song, when they wrote that song, first off, they was dealing with human trafficking and sex trading and slave trading. They were a very brutal type being. So more than likely during the slave trade and human trafficking, he was doing the same things that these beings that do sex trafficking and human trafficking right here in current day and time was doing. But he just happened to be in a position where he was depressed and he almost died, and then he wrote that song. But when he wrote that song, it did not change him from the sin of slave trading and human trafficking. It did not change that part of him. So what reckoning came between him and God? It's like right now, let's say P. Diddy. I'm going to use him as an example. Let's say right now, you see the whole list of crimes that he has done and been doing, and he's known for who he is. And let's say right now in prison, he just about loses his life hanging on a thread. And he comes back, like to say he gets pondered on by the prisoners in there, and he's hanging by his last thread of life, and God brings him up out of it. And then he doesn't stop what he's doing. He writes a song to thank God for saving his life, and then he doesn't stop what he was in there for in the first place. That's what the likening of this song is to history. And that's why the popes do not believe in the grace of God. They believe they are the intercessory being that harnesses whatever grace they do. Elon Musk definitely doesn't believe in Christ and God, and all he believes in strict science, and that he could somehow be the savior of mankind. So now, as this tone is ringing, I did not listen to see if she even went into the second verse or the other verses or other versions. When we've been there 10,000 years. I didn't. But I decided when I came on here, I started clicking around and I said, you know what? Let me look at the history of Amazing Grace. And that's what I'm going to read. I don't know if I'm going to get to the Holy Tablets. I also pulled up another one of those. Remember, just a few days ago, I did the Like a Good Neighbor. And the good neighbor has to do with the Indians and our breath and our air of the breath of life and the transition of great. They got another air plan approval system that has to do with history and they have another one of them that they just put out, monitoring the network, attainment of the network, inventory. Um, what other words did I see here that lets you know that they're not talking about carbon emissions? They're talking about beings, individual beings. Um, what other words did I see here? Historical SIP actions. And then they name off all these different Indian counties. And they even say within this how these tribal nations play a major part and major role. But it's also this tribal, native Indian thing that's going on where they're giving reparations to them in these like final moments and making sure that they're all straight. Even today, there was some stuff like, let me tell you, let me read it off real quick. No, 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 I don't want to get too far off. But even in this Amazing Grace information that I'm about to read, it was the same thing. There contracts between the natives on the land. Mhm. So, all the stuff that I have down here to go over again. I may not get a chance to go over all of it this evening because I got again Notre Dame, the building, the history of Notre Dame up. And again, if you were with me when I this pope, there's a pope here, a martyr that has his head in his hand. They say they're also finding new like bones and carcasses and statues buried that they hadn't, I guess, seen in years. It's like Notre Dame is the place where all of the religions are connected. Let me show you what I'm looking at and why I'm so quiet right now. My apologies. As I'm gonna go into Amazing Grace, but again, before I go into Notre Dame, and I prefer, I feel like I need to talk about Notre Dame first, but because I was captured by the tone of the young lady singing that, I bet you they wouldn't let her sing the second part, when we've been there 10,000 years again, which was written years later by Harriet Beecher Stowe in one of her novels. And you know that had to do with anti-slavery, but the person that wrote Amazing Grace, he didn't change. He still was, and as a matter of fact, I think they say he even got worse. In his trade, slaving, human trafficking, um, I'm depressed because this woman don't want to marry me. So every woman is a threat mentality mind. The writer of Amazing Grace. Let me go over Amazing Grace. Get to Notre Dame. This might take a couple of days because again, I said I spent almost 45 minutes of being blocked in my system of trying to get on here, and I had a busy day, recitals, and just it was a beautiful busy day, and then I got an even busier day tomorrow, so I don't want to be up late, even though I want to. Even though I want to. Who's here with me? King Ellis. King Ellis. Greater light. So let me read this to begin with Amazing Grace. What does Notre Dame mean? Do they have here in the beginning of what I mean? Notre is north. Dame is what, dome? Didn't they have a football game or something going on with Notre Dame? I don't watch football anymore. Ever since my stepfather transitioned, I stopped watching football and basketball and stuff. But that was our thing, and I don't do sports anymore. But let me find out etymology of what is Notre Dame. I think I'm right. Notre it means north. Dame etymology and um, origin. And I'm thinking with them doing that song, is that another mechanism that they use for entrapment of the minds or the souls? Because why was it so important? You know how they like what's his name? A lot of people I started to say Puff Daddy, but I don't know why I'm people get the key to the city or they get to cut the ribbon to the city or when there's unveiling of places and reconstruction. Why was it so important that Elon was in the head of that, right? Why was it like mandatory that he was there to initiate it? And then even this week, um, he is now truly proclaimed the richest person to live in these days and time. And again, like how I went over the YMCA song and I broke it down, wow, that Trump and Elon, they don't get down with the get down with the LGBTQ and all that. So why is YMCA so important to them? And that's how I found Napoleon. And Napoleon is a head cornerstone. He's one of the cornerstones of the Church of Notre Dame. Um, oh, Notre Dame means Our Lady. It has nothing to do with North. Our Lady. So the Hunchback of Our Lady. Really? Our Lady. The name Notre Dame translates to Our Lady. Okay, all right, all right. And the construction of the cathedral began 1163 under the direction of Bishop Maurice de Sully. and was largely completed by 1260. All right, let me skip on over and get over here to Amazing Grace and read about Amazing Grace. So if you go to my short, I sang Amazing Grace, but I wasn't singing it as how I've sang it in the past. This time it was more so I get it. I get it. I get why they would use that song in their initiation of their so-called reset. How Trump done reneged on everything. He didn't want no deal. I'm going too far off, but it's like my mind is just going a million miles a minute right now. Let me stay on Amazing Grace. Let me stay on Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace is a Christian hymn published in 1779, but it really wasn't a Christian hymn because, first off, when the guy wrote it, he wasn't saved and he didn't believe in Christ, and he was adamantly involved in slave trade, human trafficking, and all the things that have to do with war. And they say he had a spiritual conversion, but his conversion did not make him stop doing slave trading. They say here that he became an abolitionist, and then based on other places besides Wikipedia, they say that's not found to be a fact. So again, let me read. Amazing Grace is a Christian hymn published in 1779, written in 1772 by English Anglican clergyman and poet John Newton, 1725 and 1807. It is possibly the most sung and most recorded hymn in the world, and especially popular in the United States, where it's used for both religious and secular purposes. Newton wrote the words from personal experience. He grew up without any particular religious conviction, but his life's path was formed by a variety of twists and coincidences that were often put into motion by others' reactions to what they took as a recalcitrant insubordination. He was pressed into service with the Royal Navy, and after leaving the service, he became involved in the Atlantic slave trade. Look what it says there, 39 men. Am I sharing? Let me see. Am I sharing the screen? Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. It says 39 men, 15 boys, 24 women, and 16 girls just arrived in the Brigantine Demba, Francis Bear. All right. So let me keep reading. In 1748, a violent storm battled his vessel off the coast of County Donegal, Ireland, so severely that he called out to God for mercy. While this moment marked his spiritual conversion, he continued slave trading until 1754 or 1755. They're not sure which year. So what they saying 7 years later when he ended his seafaring altogether. So it's not that he stopped slave trading, he just stopped sailing on boats. Or didn't he stopped doing it on boats. More than likely he was probably still doing it on land. Human trafficking, just not on the boats. Newton began studying Christian theology and later became an abolitionist. And again, there are places that say that like it's a not that it is all factual. Ordained by the Church of England in 1764, Newton became the curate of Olney Buckinghamshire. Buckinghamshire. Oh, I want to know what these words mean, but I don't want to be here all night. It'll come to me later. Where he began to write hymns with poet William Cowper. Amazing Grace was written to illustrate a sermon on New Year's Day of 1773. New Year's Day of 1773. But they say he wrote it back then. Amazing Grace was written to illustrate a sermon on New Year's Day of 1773. It is unknown if there was any music accompanying the verses. It may have been chanted by the congregation. It debuted in print in 1779. Look how many years later from the time they said he initially wrote it. In Newton's and Cowper's Olney hymns, but settled into relative obscurity in England. In the United States, Amazing Grace became a popular song by Baptists and Methodist preachers as part of their evangelizing, especially in the American South. Why? Especially in the American South. It was I was in someone's chat today. I wasn't there long. That was referencing how songs, the replaying of songs, and we all know that. We do know it, but how uh connected is the information to you to realize that when a song constantly replays, how it becomes part of your DNA. And then for the songs that aren't well, yeah, those songs that are constantly replayed. So what he said, he used an example of going to a club, and he was saying how, yeah, it may not be the dancers, but in between the dancers and the drinking, those clubs play the same songs over and over and over again. Or when you're listening to your favorite DJ or favorite radio station, and in between, yeah, you have that DJ that you like to hear their voice, but you don't realize in the time that you're listening to them for seasons, they're playing the same songs over and over. And when he mentioned that, I went back and started thinking about some of the DJs that I used to like growing up, like Freddie Cruz, The Quiet Storm, Hot 105, Miami. Uh, he was one of my favorite DJs. Even though it was a late night, he was my that's the top of the list. Freddie Cruz. And literally, and, and unless a new song came out, he had a certain playlist that he switched and dabbled up with. He played a lot of the same songs over and over and over again. And so this uh creator, the streamer, went into mantras and things like that. So now that came right into connection to me being um stimulated by the young lady singing Amazing Grace at this unveiling of the reopening of Notre Dame at this time of the year, with Elon Musk taking his position as Antichrist and Trump doing all the things that I guess scripture said that he would be doing. So, but here we are at especially the American South during the Second Great Awakening, the early 19th century. It has been associated with more than 20 melodies. In 1835, American composer William Walker set it to a tune known as New Britain in the shape note format. This is the version most frequently sung today. So the tune that was connected to the words is a New Britain song. Okay, so it's a New Britain's anthem in so many words. Not just a hymnal, but an anthem. What is a shape note format? Shape notes are musical notation designed to facilitate congregational and social singing. The notation became a popular teaching device in American singing schools during the 19th century. Shapes were added to the note heads in written music to help singers find pitches with major and minor scales. Shape notes. Let's see. Let's see, said the blind man. Oh, so now we have, see, here's something I didn't know. I know fa sol la, mi, fa. I can't, I told you, all the years of piano lessons, and I cannot connect with the notes. All the years of chorus, I started chorus, and they didn't teach us to read notes when we was in the choir at church. We just, however the piano went, that's what we put it to our ear. So I have a falsetto. And in elementary, again, from third to sixth grade, I was in the chorus and in a sort of advanced music class with the chief musician of University Miami Baptist Church, Mrs. Taft. And she started off teaching us to read notes. And all I could tell you is every good boy does fine. I don't know nothing else. I know it's C, D, but I cannot connect it. I cannot connect with the notes. And now here it is, me seeing something I never knew. I never knew they had shape notes. Look at that. There's a square. There's a pyramid. There's a sphere. There's an oval. I didn't know that. Wow. I just learned something new. Since my granddaughter all into her violin, I'm gonna say, you know what, you may want to look at this. You know, notes had shapes at one time. Notes had shapes. What can we do with that? What can we do with that? All right, so let me go back. Let me go back before I get thrown off again. So now I know what a shape note is. This, and I was studying music out of one of my companion books for almost a month and a half, and I didn't see nothing in that book about shape notes. I didn't see anything in there about shape notes. I tell you, this mandala, with the message that forgiveness and redemption are possible regardless of sins committed, and that the soul can be delivered from despair through the mercy of God. Amazing Grace is one of the most recognizable songs in the English speaking world. See, for somebody like Newton, who was into all the dirt and demise that he was doing, He felt like as long as you have amazing grace and a shape notes that have shape, you could sing and you could keep on sinning and you'll be all right. See, that's where they twisted and shifted. Uh, when the churches start saying that it don't matter. You can sin every single day as long as there's God's grace and you say, Jesus, forgive me, you forgiven. Well, see, that's something I don't agree with. That's just me. That's something I don't agree with. I believe uh, you gonna have to suffer for your sins one way or the other. Ain't no saying sorry and then don't get judged for it. If that's the case, Jesus didn't have to come, and there won't be people to be left behind. See, they took and twisted that. Uh, that's what happened, and then people start saying, "Well, I got plenty time. I got plenty time to go ahead and sin, huh? I got plenty time to go out there and do my dirt and do things that is unnatural to nature, unnatural to God. Uh, I got plenty time, huh? Ooh, ooh. They learned that from what's his name? What's this man name? Newton, when he was out there on the boat. And when he finished writing that song, he went right back whipping and probably sodomizing and everything else he was doing. He said, "Oh God, thank you for saving me from almost um, the ship almost hitting the rocks." American historian Gilbert Chase writes that it is without a doubt the most famous of all folk hymns. And Jonathan Atkins, or Aiken, a Newton biographer, estimates that the song is performed about 10 million times annually. 10 million times annually, but one of the first songs to initiate um, the grand opening of Notre Dame with Elon Musk making sure they probably wasn't going to start anything until Elon got there. Uh, ooh, ooh, everything in your face. It has had particular influence in folk music and has become an emblematic black spiritual hymn. See how they just threw the word black in there. I want to know who the writers and contributors to this section of Wikipedia. Who, who are the contributors to this section? They're going to put the word black. Ain't nobody been talking about heaven is black. You know it's a rap. See the term, and the heavens are black in Isaiah 5. Okay. It has become emblematic, emblematic black spiritual. Its universal message has been a significant factor in its crossover into secular music. But how many blacks actually know the second verse? The second verse was what was written for by black people who understood that the first couple of verses ain't had nothing to do with them. So when you get to when we've been there 10,000 years, when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, he says something about the sun will have some type of effect on him, the one who initially wrote it. They said even the tribes, the so-called native tribe, one of they monuments have it on there like the Rosetta Stone. Let me keep reading. Amazing Grace became newly popular during the 1960s revival of American folk music and has been recorded thousands of times during and since the 20th century. Oh, look like I need to go and rewrite Amazing Grace with a whole nother beat and tone. Take out that Great Britain shape note format. Huh? And they can't say I can't do it. Not when they say how many different times and how many different versions and how many different people. Ain't no copyright laws on it. Bet you by the end of this week, this ain't gonna be no rush. A lot of my songs the past few days have not been rush. Even that short one, this one right here. Let me stop for a second, play it real quick. Even this one right here, this it's the only one verse, and I got it playing a couple of times, but this didn't take no uh 10, 15 minutes for me to get the right tone, the right beat, and get her to say pa na bab yan properly, and the name that was given to me properly. Listen.
Heaven's black, Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us, promise keeper. I'm already words intact, promise keeper.
So Amazing Grace might take a whole 2 weeks.
The heavens are black. The heavens are black. He's a promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come. Holy, we are back. Lift your heads. 6 wings covered lonely, shaking temples. Raise your beds. Wake up Israel. Heaven's black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us. Promise keeper. I'm already. Words intact. Promise keeper. And the heavens are black. The heavens are black. The heavens are black. He's a promise keeper, and the heavens are black. Here we come. Holy, we are back. Lift your heads. 6 wings covered lowly, shaking temples. Raise your beds. Wake up Israel. Heaven's black. Jesus forward, coming back. God is for us. Promise keeper. I'm already. Words intact. Promise keeper. And the heavens are black.
Yeah, that's what it looked like I gotta do. That's what it looked like I'm gonna do. John Newton's conversion. Now, here's the story about John Newton's conversion. In 1725, Newton was born in Wapping, a district in London near Thames. Okay, near the River Isis. It's part of Thames, known alternatively in parts as River Isis. Oh, so let's see. John Newton may very well just be a simulation, huh? Okay. So he was born near the River Isis. His father was a shipping merchant. All this sound like some of these fairy tale um, that came to life, fairy tale simulations. His father was a shipping merchant who was brought up as a Catholic but had Protestant sympathies. And his mother was a devout, independent, unaffiliated with the Anglican Church. She had intended Newton to become a clergyman, but she died of tuberculosis when he was 6 years old. For the next few years, while his father was at sea, Newton was raised by his emotionally distant stepmother. Okay, and he was also sent to boarding school where he was mistreated. So he was mistreated by his stepmama. He was mistreated at the boarding school. At the age of 11, he joined his father on a ship as an apprentice. His seagoing career would be marked by headstrong disobedience. As a youth, Newton began a pattern of coming very close to death, examining his relationship with God, then relapsing into bad habits. Okay, as a sailor, he denounced his faith after being influenced by a shipmate who discussed with him the characteristics of men, manners, and opinions. And times that sound like something I would like to read. Characteristics of men. Oh, it's one of them books. No, it don't sound like nothing I want to read. I'm looking at this man right here, and he denounced his faith after he turned into human trafficking characteristics of men, manners, opinions, and times, with his hair looking better than uh, uh, look at his hair. Look at his hair back there. Who was doing this man hair back there? It don't even look like the wigs, huh? Look at him. He's a copper too. Look, 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 look. His name Copper. His name Copper. Look at his hair. I'm talking about they had his hair done right. And he got his eyebrows arched all the way back there. Look at that. Look how he got his shirt. You know when they was wearing their shirt open like that, they was swinging that way. Look at him. Oh, okay. No, I don't want to know about the characteristics of men. I don't want to know about it. That's probably what happened. This is how he got entangled. Newton got entangled in um those ways. His name was Earl. All the Earls back then. The Earls were like ladies. The Earls were like ladies. If you go back and do the studies, the Earls were like ladies. Okay, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe me. Okay, so once he read the characteristics, there's the sticks that the creator was talking about earlier. I want to reveal who it is I'm talking about, but I don't, because I'm tired of people swearing and thinking that I'm cloud chasing and I'm not. So, but he mentioned sticks, and he was talking about how they took off the walls of Egypt and said, yes, men gathered sticks, and how sticks became fags, like cigarettes and fags and all that, and sticks. And oh my goodness, the characteristics of men, manners, opinions, and time, a book by the third Earl of Shaftesbury. So this when he switched out. In the series of letters, Newton later wrote, like an unwary sailor who quits his port just before the rising storm, I renounce the hopes and comforts of the gospel at the very time when every other comfort was about to fail me. His disobedience caused him to be pressed into the Royal Navy, and he took advantage of opportunities to overstay his leave. He deserted the Navy to visit Mary Polly Catlett, Polly Pocket. Mary Polly Catlett, a family friend with whom he had fallen in love. Okay, so he got off the boat, left his boyfriend, and he ended up falling in love with a friend. Y'all know. He ended up falling in love with his friend. Okay, Mary Polly Catlett, and they got Polly in quotation. So Polly means something, but I don't want to go that deep. My mind already to see this as some soap opera fairy tale simulation. After enduring humiliation for deserting, he was traded as a crew to a slave ship. After enduring humiliation for deserting, he was traded as crew to a slave ship. He began a career in slave trading. Newton often openly mocked the captain by creating obscene poems and songs about him. So he was a bully, which became so popular that the crew began to join in. Oh, so he gained followers by writing obscene poems and songs. Sound like a rap. He was a rapper. So he left his boyfriend, got with his friend Polly, and then ended up slave trading, human trafficking, and then he started rapping, and he ended up getting his crew to join him. So he had him a crew. The DJ John Newton. His disagreements with several colleagues resulted in his being starved almost to death, imprisoned while at sea, and chained like the slaves they carried. So he was that good of a rapper. Look at how he looked. Look at his hairdo. He got the remember when Madonna went and did her hair like this? He what's the lady for Star Wars? You see the connection. See, he was swinging both ways. He done got on a boat. He started rapping, but then they said, "Look, you act too black or whatever, whoever they had on the slave ship. You gonna go down there and join them, huh?" Look at his hair. Look at his hair. He was himself enslaved by the Sherbro. Let me see. Sherbro people are a native people of Sierra Leone who speak to the Sherbro language. Who speak the Sherbro language. Let me see what the Sherbro people look like back then. Sher Sherbro. Did it say? Yeah, Sherbro. Do they got an image of the Sherbro people? Hold on, give me a moment. Okay, okay. Here's what they look like today. Let me show you what the Shrubbo people look like today. So, wait a minute. Share this tab. There's the Shebro people today. He left a mark upon them because they black and they paint themselves white. Uh, he left his mark upon them. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What they saying? Idris Alba is a shrub, bro? Why they got his face here? Oh, okay. I just talked about Idris Alba to my best friend the other day. She was asking me something, and I just happened to bring up Alba, and she was like, "I don't know who that is." I was like, the guy who acted. I tried to think of all the different movies to tell her she was. she she didn't know. I couldn't no way tell her. I could have probably sent her a picture of the phone, but I was just tickled how we get up there, and when it comes to stuff like that, say like, I don't know who that. Nope, I don't remember him in the movie. And the last movie I came to, I said, and remember in American Gangster when Denzel just walked up to him in broad daylight, and she's like, "Mm-mm." I'm talking about I was naming the movies left and right. She couldn't pinpoint who Idris Elba was. He only came up because they have him in the little pictures with the Sherbro people. Anyways, after several months, he came to think of Sierra Leone as his home, but his father intervened. Oh, so he ended up getting dropped off with the Sherbro people. But his father intervened after Newton sent him a letter describing his circumstances, and crew from another ship happened to find him. Newton claimed the only reason he left Sierra Leone was because of Polly. What did Polly Pocket do to you, boy? Polly Pocket, he said, I tried to go straight, and even Polly didn't want me. Uh, Polly didn't want me, and I decided I wanted to hang with the Sherbro people while aboard the ship Greyhound. So before the Greyhound dogs had racetracks, before the Greyhound bus became the most um, widely traveled type of transportation in the United States, there was a ship called Greyhound. Newton gained notoriety as being one of the most profane men the captain had ever met. In a culture where sailors habitually swore, Newton was admonished several times for not only using the worst words the captain had ever heard, but creating new ones. See, he was a trendsetter rapper, new ones to exceed the limits of verbal debauchery. In March 1748, while the Greyhound was in North Atlantic, a violent storm came upon the ship that was so rough it swept overboard a crew member who was standing where Newton had been moments before. After hours, the crew emptying water from the ship and expected it to be capsized, Newton and another mate tied themselves to the ship's pump to keep from being washed overboard, working for several hours. After proposing the measure to the captain, Newton had turned and said, "If this will not do, then Lord have mercy upon us." Newton rested briefly before returning to the deck to steer for the next 11 hours. During this time at the wheel, he pondered his divine challenge. About 2 weeks later, the battered ship and starving crew landed in Low Swilly, Ireland. So they picked him up from the Sabru, what do you call it, people? The Sherbru River, traveled and traveled along. And 2 weeks later, the ship ended up in Ireland. For several weeks before the storm, Newton had been reading The Christian's Pattern, a summary of the 15th century, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempis. So look, they trying to say Christ was being imitated. Let me see, Christian devotional book first composed in medieval Latin, De Imitation Christi. The devotional text divided into four books of detailed spiritual instructions, helpful counsels of the spiritual life, directives for the interior life. Oh, okay. Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempis. He was the weed man. Yeah. Oh, it says Kemp, not hemp. Oh, he was from the Netherlands. Wait, Latin published anonymously. And let me keep reading. The memory of his own Lord have mercy upon us, uttered during the moment of desperation in the storm, did not leave him. He began to ask if he was worthy of God's mercy or in any way redeemable. Not only had he neglected his faith, but directly opposed it, mocking others who showed theirs, deriding and denouncing God as a myth. He came to believe that God had sent him a profound message and he begun to work through him. Newton's conversion was not immediate, but he contacted Polly's family and announced his intention to marry her. Her parents were hesitant as he was known to be unreliable and impetuous. They knew he was profane too, but allowed him to write to Polly. And he set to begin to submit the authority for her sake. He sought a place on a slave ship bound for Africa, and Newton and his crewmates participated in most of the same activities he had written about before. So he had never really stopped all the stuff he was doing after whatever he, with the song or whatever, and saying, Polly, I want to marry you, Polly Pocket. Okay, so The only immorality from which he was able to free himself was profanity. After a severe illness, his resolve was renewed, yet he retained the same attitudes towards slavery as was held by his contemporaries. Newton continued in the slave trade through several voyages where he sailed the coast of Africa, now as a captain, and procured slaves being offered for sale in larger ports, transporting them to North America. So, as he got closer to transitioning from um, so called getting closer to transitioning through his spiritual awakening, he began to rise in his positions. I see. Uh, in between voyages, he married Polly in 1750 because she didn't want to marry him when he was a nobody. She definitely didn't want to marry him when he was going from coast to coast. He didn't, you know, trafficking and all that. She knew what he was doing. She knew what type of man he was, but she waited to marry him, I guess. And here he married Polly in 1750, and he found it more difficult to leave her at the beginning of each trip. After 3 ship voyages in the slave trade, Newton was promised a position as ship's captain with cargo unrelated to slavery, but at the age of 30, he collapsed and never sailed again. Oh, so he was doing all this before he was 30, okay? The only curate, working as customs agent in Liverpool, starting in 1756, Newton began to teach himself Latin, Greek, and theology. He and Polly immersed themselves in the church community, and Newton's passion was so impressive that his friends suggested he become a priest of the Church of England. He was turned down by John Gilbert, Archbishop of York. Why he look up to date? In 17, oh, okay, Archbishop of York is who John Gilbert was with. Okay, in 1758, ostensibly for having no university degree. Okay, so he was a rapper who you know had characteristics of men, and um but he didn't have a college degree. Okay, okay, all right, all right. So that's the only reason why they didn't take him. Let's see. Although the more likely reasons were his leaning towards evangelism and tendency to socialize with Methodists. Oh, so they had a division in their community. The archbishops of York's didn't deal with you if you didn't have you a HBCU, and then like the communities of today, say evangelism was like uh, the Christian witnesses, and Methodist was like the Hebrew Israelites or something. I don't know. It's just that they were all separatists of each other. So John Gilbert didn't want to deal with him because he also socialized on in other networks. Newton continued his devotions after being encouraged by a friend. He wrote about his experiences in the slave trade and his conversion. William Legge, he was a British statesman who served as Secretary of State. He was an earl. Look at him. He was an earl. So him and his earls still writing and keeping in touch. All the earls that he had on the boat with him, they all still writing each other and encouraging each other with their perfect penmanship. Impressed with his story, sponsored Newton for ordination by John Green, the Bishop of Lincoln. And there is the Bishop of Lincoln with their lions and their Our Lady of Canterbury. John Green was a duke, he wasn't an earl. He had passed the early stages and offered him curacy, cure souls of the parish. He was a curator. A curate is a person who is invested in the care or cure of souls of the parish. In this sense, curate means a parish priest. But in English speaking countries, the term curate commonly used to describe a clergy who are assisted to the parish priest. So he became curacy of Olney, Buckinghamshire in 1764. Now let's get down to the nitty gritty of the Amazing Grace. Only was a village of about 2,500 residents whose main industry was making lace by hand. The people were mostly illiterate and many of them were poor. Newton's preaching was unique in that he shared many of his own experiences from the pulpit. Many clergy preached from a distance, not admitting any intimacy with temptation or sin. He was involved in his parishioners' lives and was much loved, although his writing and delivery were sometimes unpolished, but his devotion and conviction were apparent and forceful. And he often said his mission was to break a hard heart and heal a broken heart. He struck friendship with William Cowper. Okay, William Cowper. That's the guy that uh let's see. Y'all saw that picture of him earlier. Look at him. Look at his poses. Look at this pose. This ain't the same Copper. Remember, it was another Copper. He ain't look like this. Ooh, look at Copper. Look at that. What he got on his head? Is that a bonnet? Hi. is, is that a bonnet? Let's go back. Let me go back. Newton's preacher was unique that he shared many of his own experiences from the pulpit. Many clergy preached from a distance, not admitting back down to William Cowper. He struck a friendship with William Cowper, a gifted writer who had failed at a career in law and suffered bouts of insanity, attempting suicide several times. So he became friends with the insane, suicidal Cowper, enjoyed only in Newton's company. He was also new to Olney and had gone through spiritual conversions similar to Newton's. Together, their effect in the local congregation was impressive, like Batman and Robin. In 1768, they found it necessary to start a weekly prayer meeting to meet the needs of increasing number of parishioners. They also began writing lessons for children, partly from Cowper's literary influence, and partly because learned vicars were expected to write verses. Newton began to try his hand at hymns, which had become popular through the language, made plain for common people to understand. Several prolific hymn writers were at the most productive in 18th century, including Isaac Watts, whose hymns Newton had grown up hearing, and Charles Wesley, with whom Newton was familiar. Wesley's brother John, an eventual founder of Methodist Church, had encouraged Newton to go to the clergy. Watts was a pioneer in English hymn writing based on his work after Psalms. The most prevalent hymns by Watts and others were written in the common meter in 8686. The first line is 8 syllables and the second is 6. Newton and Cowper attempted to present a poem or hymn for each prayer meeting. The lyrics to Amazing Grace were written in late 1772, probably used in a prayer meeting for the first time on January 1st, 1773. See how they say probably? See how the dates don't match when they first said he wrote them? A collection of poems Newton's and Copper had written for use in services at Olney was bound and published anonymously in 1779 under the title Olney Hymns. Now, why would it have been um, anonymous if they're saying John Newton wrote it? And anyways, how sweet the sound. So here's the words to the 1779, which was probably written in 1772, so they say, or probably written in 1740 something when he was on the boat. Who knows? Let's read it. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. He wrote that when he wrote it, he was still blind and he was still participating in slave trade and human trafficking, cursing, saying the worst curse words, making up new curse words, denouncing God, and being bisexual. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. He first believed what? That he would not die in the storm. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace have brought me safe this far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me, his word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be as long as life endures. Yes, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow, the sun forbear to shine, but God who called me here below will be forever mine. Oh, I just got bored with that. I just got bored with that because everything that they say here in regards to the story doesn't add up. Doesn't add up when they say he wrote the story, then everything that happened between and after, and it still doesn't say that he changed his thoughts about his racist, discriminatory, supremacy ways. Now, why? I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to read anymore right now because this is a lot of reading just to get to the point of why it was important that that song is one of the opening songs for Notre Dame. Again, I do have to get up early. I have a lot to do. I did want to get on here earlier and I was blocked time and time again. Um, but I will come back with this tomorrow and maybe have a little bit more organization to it. Maybe not. Who knows how it goes? Because I sure didn't think that I would find anything funny about what I was reading. And that whole story just seemed like some type of simulation that just. I wonder if they'd ever made a movie about him. They probably made probably several cartoons, and we watched the cartoons and didn't realize that the cartoons that we were watching had to do with this man here, John Newton. Greater light I appreciate those who came over and hung out with me. What time is it? Look at it. 12:46, and I wanted to read from the holy tablets, but again, today was a long day. The fact that I even made it on here was a miracle. Great light, and hopefully I get to hang out with y'all tomorrow.